Have you noticed how easy it has become to call everything a priority when your nervous system is under constant pressure? A message waiting, a decision pending, a future to secure, a person to keep stable, a role to perform, a version of yourself to maintain. And somewhere in the middle of all this, a quiet realization appears. You are doing many things right, yet something feels dispersed, not chaotic, not dramatic, just scattered. Not because you are incapable, but because your inner field is being pulled in too many directions. At the same time, this is where 2026 begins to matter, not as a calendar year, not as a prediction, but as a mirror that reflects pressure with precision, because this year does not reward more effort. It responds to posture. You may have already felt it in subtle ways. Choices that once tolerated delay now feel heavy when postponed. Relationships that once survived performance now resist anything that is not real. Your own body no longer negotiates with inner contradiction. We are the Pleiadians. Our role is not to instruct your behavior, not to direct your decisions, not to interfere with your path. We function as guardians of the emotional field. We stabilize perception. When the signal becomes noisy, we support coherence between heart, nervous system, and conscious choice. We observe where energy leaks and where it consolidates, because when the inner field is unstable, even correct actions create fatigue. And when the inner field is coherent, even small actions carry weight. This is why we speak now, not to add urgency, not to introduce fear, but to remove interference before movement begins. From our perspective, what many call crisis is not collapse, it is recalibration. A recalibration that makes one thing clear: your number one priority for 2026 is not productivity, it is not money, it is not visibility, it is not approval, it is not being understood, it is not even mission. Your number one priority is internal. It is the condition that determines whether every external step builds coherence or drains life force. When the field inside you is divided, life becomes negotiation. You negotiate with your body. You negotiate with your emotions. You negotiate with your truth. You call it adaptation. You call it growth. But your system recognizes it as exhaustion. 2026 will not ask for more tasks. It will not reward constant adjustment. It will ask for coherence, not as belief, not as intention, as a lived state, a state where what you feel, what you know, and what you choose stop pulling in different directions. This is the priority that makes all others possible, and everything that follows: career, relationships, purpose, abundance, only becomes clean after this is held. So do not rush forward. Do not attempt to solve the year from the surface. Begin where power actually resides, inside the field you sustain every day. Coherence is not a feeling. It is a condition your system recognizes before your mind agrees. When coherence is absent, everything competes for priority. Thoughts argue, emotions pull, the body resists, and you try to manage it with strategy, with planning, with discipline. But discipline cannot stabilize a divided field. This is why we say this priority comes first, before decisions, before plans, before commitments. Because when the inner field is unstable, even correct choices become heavy. You feel it as hesitation, as overthinking, as the need to justify what you already know. Coherence removes that friction. It aligns sensation, perception, and action into one direction, not by force, by clarity. And clarity must be anchored, not remembered later, not assumed, anchored now. Go to the comments and write exactly, I choose coherence. Write it, because naming the posture reduces inner negotiation. Write it, because coherence weakens when it remains unspoken, under pressure. Write it, to create a reference point your nervous system can return to when external demands intensify. This act is not symbolic. It stabilizes decision-making. It lowers emotional noise. It reduces the impulse to over-explain or over-adjust. And once coherence is anchored, something becomes noticeable, not externally, internally. Certain priorities lose their urgency. Certain obligations begin to feel optional. Certain paths quietly reveal that they were never aligned. To begin with, you do not need to analyze this. You will feel it. And as this feeling settles, another truth starts to surface, not as a thought, but as relief, because what collapses next is not your structure, it is the illusion that everything deserved to be first. Many priorities collapse, not because they were wrong, but because they were premature. They were placed on an unstable field. You may have noticed this pattern. You commit to something with clarity, with intention, with sincerity, and yet, weeks later, the weight returns, not because the path changed, but because the inner condition that was supposed to carry it was never settled. When coherence is missing, every priority competes for control. They do not cooperate, they demand. One pulls through urgency, another through guilt, another through fear of loss, another through identity, and slowly, your energy fragments. You begin managing priorities instead of living them. This is why so many structures, goals, roles, missions feel exhausting, even when they are meaningful. They are built on negotiation between what you feel and what you think you should do. From our perspective, this is not a failure of discipline. It is a misplacement of order. Coherence was meant to come first, not as preparation, as foundation. Without it, even aligned intentions lose sustainability. You may push forward anyway, but pushing is costly. It asks your nervous system to compensate. It asks your body to endure contradiction. It asks your intuition to stay quiet. And this is why burnout does not arrive suddenly. It accumulates quietly, logically, predictably. 2026 will not reward those who can endure the most. It will respond to those who know what no longer deserves to be carried. This is why some priorities begin to fade once coherence is anchored, not because you abandoned them, but because they were never essential. They existed to fill instability, and when stability appears, their function disappears. This realization is not dramatic. It is relieving, because it returns choice to its proper place, not as effort, but as alignment. And from this alignment, another movement begins, not about adding something new, but about ending what quietly drains your field. And this is where the next anchor forms, without force. What drains you most is not what challenges you. It is what no longer responds, yet continues to demand your presence. Misalignment does not announce itself loudly. It tightens in the chest, in the stomach, in the way your breath shortens before certain conversations, in the way your body resists before certain commitments. You already sense this, not as a thought, as a contraction. And yet, many people keep negotiating with what has already ended. They call it patience. They call it responsibility. They call it loyalty. They call it maturity. But tolerance is not wisdom when it costs coherence. From our perspective, energy does not disappear. It leaks through staying, where your signal weakens, through repeating what no longer evolves, through maintaining structures that require explanation to justify their existence. This is how clarity erodes, not through chaos, through quiet compromise. And the longer this continues, the more effort is required just to remain functional. 2026 does not permit this level of compensation, not because it is unforgiving, but because it is exact. What is misaligned will demand more and more energy to stay in place. What is aligned will ask for less and offer more. This is not punishment. It is physics at the level of the field. And this is where the second anchor must be placed, not to force endings, not to dramatize separation, not to create conflict, but to end negotiation with what drains you. Quietly, go to the comments and write exactly, I end what drains me. Write it, because limits lose strength when they remain internal. Write it, because naming the ending interrupts the reflex to postpone clarity. Write it, to give your nervous system permission to stop compensating for misalignment. This act does not create rupture, it creates relief. Energy begins to return without confrontation. Boundaries form without defense. You no longer need to push away what drains you. It loses access on its own, because what survives only through tolerance cannot remain when coherence is sustained. And as this release settles, space opens. Not empty space, usable space. Space for choices that do not require justification. Space for movements that feel clean. Space for decisions that do not drain before they begin. And in this space, your system begins to recognize what strengthens you without persuasion, not as an idea, as a bodily certainty. And from that certainty, movement reorganizes itself, quietly, naturally, without force. When what drains you is no longer tolerated, the system stops negotiating, not with the world, with itself. You feel this first, as quiet relief, a reduction in inner noise, a loosening of urgency, a sense that you are no longer holding your breath to keep life together. You wake up, and the day does not push back. Immediately, your body feels available, not braced. Decisions begin to simplify, not because choices disappear, but because resistance does. You no longer need to convince yourself to act. Movement becomes a response, not an effort. This is what happens when the priority is correct. Coherence stops being something you try to maintain. It becomes the baseline you return to when pressure rises. From here, clarity does not require urgency to be felt. You are not rushing to secure the future. You are positioned to meet it without losing yourself. We observe this shift clearly when coherence is sustained and misalignment is released. The field reorganizes around you, not suddenly, not theatrically, quietly, precisely. Certain relationships adjust without confrontation. Certain dynamics lose intensity without explanation. Certain paths close without conflict. This is not loss. It is correction. You are no longer spending energy holding together what was never structurally sound, and that energy returns as presence. Presence in conversations without scanning for threat. Presence in decisions without rehearsing justification. Presence in silence without needing distraction. You notice something else. You explain less. You defend less. You perform less. Not because you withdrew, but because you arrived inside your own alignment. From this state, even challenges feel different. They no longer question your worth. They clarify direction. Pressure does not fragment you. It reveals where coherence still needs to be held. And this is the quiet strength of the right priority. It does not promise comfort. It removes unnecessary struggle. It does not guarantee outcomes. Stabilizes the one who chooses. From here, another truth becomes evident. Understanding coherence is not the same as sustaining it. Many recognize this state. When life is calm, fewer remain here when pressure returns. And this distinction between recognition and maintenance is what determines how stable the year becomes. This is why the next movement is not about insight. It is about posture, about what you hold when conditions change. And that posture must be anchored before the world asks again. Understanding coherence does not sustain it. Insight does not hold posture. Posture is what remains when insight is no longer present. When pressure returns, what you know rarely supports you. What supports you is what your body has learned to hold without explanation. This is where many lose stability, not because they lack truth, but because truth was never embodied. Under cost, they return to familiar strategies, explaining to regain safety, adjusting to avoid discomfort, overfunctioning to maintain order, absorbing responsibility to prevent collapse. Pressure does not create this. It reveals it. Pressure shows what you abandon first when comfort disappears. And 2026 will not negotiate with posture. It will not respond to beliefs. It will not reward understanding. It will respond to what you maintain when external stability dissolves. This is why coherence cannot be situational. It must be structural, not something you access when life allows, but something you hold when life demands. And holding coherence does not mean control. It means refusal. Refusal to fragment when urgency tries to take over. Refusal to betray your center, to restore external calm. Refusal to abandon your body, to manage outcomes. This is not rigidity. It is self-respect, expressed as nervous system stability. When coherence is held under pressure, the body learns a new truth. You remain intact without compensating. You are not erased when you stop explaining. You are not unsafe when you stop adjusting. This learning does not happen intellectually. It happens somatically. And once the body learns it, old patterns lose legitimacy. The impulse to overdo weakens. The need to manage softens. The fear of disapproval loses leverage. This is the third anchor. Not remembering coherence, but remaining coherent. When it costs energy, approval, or certainty, go to the comments and write exactly, I sustain coherence. Write it, because posture strengthens. When it is named, write it, because language anchors. Regulation, write it, to train your nervous system to stay present when pressure invites escape. This act is not motivation, it is conditioning. Conditions stability under demand, and once this posture is anchored, pressure changes role. It no longer destabilizes, clarifies. What is misaligned can no longer hide behind effort. What is coherent becomes resilient without force. From this sustained center, movement resumes, not as urgency, not as reaction, as response, measured, grounded, undivided. And when response replaces reaction, the field reorganizes itself around integrity, not endurance. "2026 is not a promise. It is not a reward. It is not a threat. It is a test of continuity, not a test of knowledge, not a test of intention, a test of what remains when pressure is steady and explanations no longer work. Many expect a year to bring something, clarity, relief, direction, but years do not bring. They reveal what you have been tolerating. They reveal where you still abandon yourself to keep things functioning. They reveal what you claim to value versus what you actually hold. This is why 2026 feels precise. It does not collapse structures loudly, tightens them, and what is held together by effort alone begins to show strain. From our perspective, this is not instability. It is exposure of posture. When coherence is present, pressure organizes. When coherence is absent, pressure fragments. The same conditions, different outcomes. This is why some will say, the year feels heavy, and others will say, feels clarifying, not because they are living different realities, but because they are holding different centers. 2026 does not ask you to be fearless. It asks you to be consistent in how you listen, consistent in what you tolerate, consistent in what you stop carrying. When it costs your center, this consistency is not dramatic. It is quiet. It shows up in what you no longer explain, in what you no longer chase, in what you no longer fix, to feel safe. From this place, something important becomes clear. The priority was never about doing more. It was about doing less. From division. And when division ends, life does not narrow. It sharpens. Choices become fewer, but cleaner. Paths become clearer, but require presence. And from here, one final movement remains. Not to understand the priority, but to seal it. Not in thought, in posture. And that sealing does not happen internally alone. It happens when you mark it in the field you share. And that is where the final anchor forms, without force, without drama, without delay. What you seal now does not restrict your future. It stabilizes your movement. Within it, a priority only becomes real when it is embodied in the field you share, not when it is merely understood. This is why posture must be marked, not as pressure, not as promise, not as performance, but as orientation. Because when pressure returns, and it will, your system will not search for insight, it will search for reference, not what you learned, not what you agreed with, what you anchored. This is not about committing to an idea of coherence. It is about committing to your center when conditions test it, the center that does not negotiate with misalignment, the center that does not abandon itself to maintain harmony, the center that remains present when urgency tries to take control. This is what coherence looks like when it is lived, not constant calm, not emotional neutrality, not perfection, but integrity. Integrity that remains when explanations no longer help. Integrity that remains when outcomes are uncertain. Integrity that remains when approval is no longer guaranteed. This is why we ask you to mark this now. Go to the comments and write exactly, "My priority is coherence." Write it because sealing reduces hesitation when decisions tighten. Write it because articulation anchors regulation in the nervous system. Write it to create a stable reference you can return to when clarity feels distant and pressure feels close. This act is not symbolic, creates continuity between who you are now and how you move next. It tells your system what does not change when circumstances do. And once this priority is sealed, something quiet becomes visible. You stop reopening negotiations that already ended. You stop revisiting decisions that were already clear. You stop carrying questions that were never yours to hold. From here, movement continues, not as urgency, not as reaction, not as correction, as response, measured, grounded, undivided. We are the Pleiadians. Our role is not to direct your life. It is to stabilize the field from which your life unfolds. Hold coherence and allow the year to respond to that stability. Across all changes, this remains. And from here, nothing essential needs to be rushed.